We have finally come to a close. Evan, you're probably going to get the most screen time you've ever had on the show when I throw it over to you. But I just want to introduce the topic because Jack Eichel, on the show at least, he brings a sort of soft spot to these episodes, because since we started this show, it was all the way back in Valentine's Day of last season. That's when the trades talks sort of started churning a little bit with Jack Eichel. And I can tell you, every single week I have it. My buddy on the show, he knew a lot about the Jack Eichel. He's a huge fan of him. He would always bring up the news around him, the rumors and his takes, all that kind of stuff. And he predicted that these rumors would sort of come out. And it's just how this trade has sort of grown with the show. It's sort of an attest to how much the show has come along. So I just want to say that before we get into the meat and potatoes of Jack Eichel making his way to Vegas, because this situation has been brewing for quite some time, and it just shows how far the show has come. So he's finally going to, now the guy who's taken up most of our show, Mr. Evan Davis, he's finally going to his team. Now I'm going to bring up the trade before I throw it over to you. So Jack Eichel was finally, after long negotiations, long hard fought nights of him, uncertainty, billboards being put up in Buffalo of get him to this team, get him out of Buffalo, let him escape the fire. He has finally been traded to the Vegas Golden Knights. A 2023 third round pick made its way to Vegas as well, in exchange for forwards Alex Tuck and Peyton Krebs, a 2022 first rounder and a 2023 second rounder. And Jack Eichel will finally be allowed to proceed with his surgery that will likely sideline him for 3 to 5 months. And one thing I want to say about the pick is that it is top 10 protected. So I believe that means if Vegas finishes, I don't see this happening, but if they were to finish so low in the league that they get a top 10 pick, or maybe they win the lottery, who knows of the way this stuff works, they would not get the top 10 pick. So Buffalo would not get that pick. I think they get a second round pick or something like that.
No. So basically what happens
you probably
is
know more than me.
If Vegas doesn't finish in the top 10, Buffalo gets their first round pick next year.
Right. Okay.
So if God forbid Vegas finishes in the top 10, it's Buffalo's pick. If they don't, it's Buffalo's first round. Buffalo gets Vegas's first round pick next year.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, it makes much more sense. But again, I'm going to just let you talk over here. What did you make of the trade? And more so was maybe trying to focus on this. I thought there was an interesting angle to look at it. Was the injury really the main reason that Jack Eichel got moved, or was it maybe the last domino in a series of things that sort of led to his trade? Like, was there other things maybe pouring in? You could rewind it years prior. Was there any other things pouring into him leaving Buffalo, or is it just strictly injury based? Couldn't get the surgery. That's the only reason why he's getting out of here.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, Jack Eichel is a guy who, I mean, like I'll do a timeline back to when he was even with the NTDP, and he's known as a winner. And then he goes to Boston College and wins the Hobey Baker in his freshman year. I think he had like 69 points in 41 games. Like, he was unbelievable. Like, he's a guy who's used to winning. And unfortunately, when you're that good of a talent at age 18, you go to a crappy team, and that's how the draft lottery is. And unfortunately, Buffalo is just a tough market because, one, they're not known for having success. And two, it's also just, it's a tough city. Like, Buffalo is not like a very attractive city for guys to go to. It's cold most of the time. Like, there's nothing really there. I mean, it doesn't really scream top market. And so that was definitely one of the issues. I listened to the Spitting Chicklets podcast that he did like immediately after getting traded. And he also just said that management was an issue. When the general manager got fired, I want to say 3 years ago, they brought in a new set of management, and they didn't click. And Jack Eichel finally got to the point in his career. He understands, I believe he's now 24 or 25, and he understands that this is his prime, and he doesn't want it to go to waste. And he just said, like, if you want to do a rebuild, make me the guy that gets you the players, because I'm just done. And the surgery then after that definitely played a huge factor. I think that was about 80% of the meat as to why he wanted to get out of there, because they weren't letting him control his own body. And you don't really see that issue. Like, usually teams are pretty lenient with players, saying like, okay, like, if this is what your agent's recommending, like, go for it. And that's why Vegas was like, do it. Like, we don't care. And I'm a little frustrated that it took that long for him to get traded. I think Jack Eichel is too, because it's not like the return of Buffalo got for Eichel was anything extraordinary, to say the least. Like, Alex Tuch's a great player. Peyton Krebs can be a great player, but they're not going to be Jack Eichel. And I think it was very selfish on Buffalo to do what they did. Now Eichel's out until about March. He could have started the season maybe in November with whatever team he got traded to. And I think right now it's going to be very difficult for them to recruit anyone. As if it wasn't any harder before, it is 1,000 times harder, because whatever Jack Eichel says, the NHL is going to believe.
100%. And that is a very interesting angle you take. And it's just something that doesn't get as much attention, because it's more on the inside thing, where you're looking at what players say between other players, what managers sort of negotiate in the off season, during the season, what's happening on the inside of the lines. And it's definitely going to spill over. I think Jack Eichel's the first domino to fall, if you will, because we haven't seen something like this happen in recent time, where a player wanted to get a surgery. Usually teams are relatively okay with it. I know the surgery is a little bit of a different one. It's more of I don't want to say hit or miss, but it's relatively new. We don't know too much about it. Buffalo, now you got to see kind of where they're coming from. They wanted to play it safe. This is their generational talent on the line. And I'm sure if it was the Leafs or any other team that has some top players in the league, the Edmonton Oilers, they would want to play it safe as well. But they didn't allow him to get the surgery, and this is what had to happen from it. Now, Evan, I just want to ask you, because I feel like I'm going to turn this Eichel situation, this talk, more to you, and then we're going to move on. What did you make of the deal? Like, is this something that Vegas is like, they're now, they just skyrocketed to favorites to hoist the cup? Or because this team, I was looking at the lines, and oh boy, was the media really heavy on giving me the scoop on what the lines are going to look like when everyone's healthy. That team, oh, they look dangerous when everyone is back and firing. Like, what do you make of that? Just your thoughts on the trade.
Yeah, I don't know if the media really took into account the cap situation that Vegas now has to face. Like, understand, they traded away Marc-Andre Fleury, who was only making $7 million. Jack Eichel's making 10. And I understand that they traded Alex Tuch. He's only making $4.5 million. And Peyton Krebs is still in the entry-level deal. So he's making less than $1 million. So I don't know. Like, I think the media was like kind of saying, if everyone is healthy, like, this is what an ideal lineup can look like. But you got to understand, guys like Riley Smith, William Karlsson, and Jonathan Marchessault are all making somewhere around $4 to $5 million. And that's their second line. And then your first line, you have Mark Stone, I believe, is making, I want to say around like 8 million. I don't know. I know Max Pacioretty's also around 8 million. You got Alex Pietrangelo, who's making around like 7 million. I don't know the contract for Shea Theodore, but I know Alec Martinez is also making around like 3.25, maybe close to 4. So I'm curious to see what this team looks like when Jack Eichel is back, because I know their lines aren't going to be the same way that the media is perceiving it, because Jack Eichel makes more than Marc-Andre Fleury, and they got rid of Marc-Andre Fleury for a prospect who probably won't be seeing much of Vegas, or Henderson. I don't know where the hell he is, but it was I was surprised when Vegas got him, because I was like, how do you move on from Fleury, but you're like, we'll take Eichel?
And I think that might be what it's going to boil down to. We got rid of Fleury, and I think this might be a way that the Vegas Golden Knights are trying to digest it. We got rid of Fleury, freed up cap space, and in exchange, we made some room for, I would probably consider, when he's healthy and when he's firing, a top 5 player in this league. And it's, I guess that's just another case of the checks and balances that is the National Hockey League. And I don't want to spend too much time on Jack Eichel, because I feel like throughout the entire year, we've sort of chimed in our thoughts on what this means and how this situation evolves. So I think everyone listening knows the storyline, all that kind of stuff. So I want to end it here on the Jack Eichel talk.